All right.
Recording is started.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. All the directors are present except Mr. Philippi. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Board of Adjustment. Today's date is July 7th, 2025, and the time is approximately 5:01 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present to turn off cell phones or set them to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet up on the front table. I'd like to take a moment to review the procedures that the board will follow tonight. First, the board will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and the applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the board. The board shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the board. The board will then formulate and vote on a motion, and the motion will either typically grant or deny the requested application. Any board member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. Any person desiring to appeal the board's decision to a court of record may do so within 30 days after the filing of this decision with the Planning and Zoning Office. Okay, moving on. Do we have any public comment on matters that are not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will move down to item 4. This will be the approval of our previous meeting minutes from our June 2nd meeting. I would ask that I'd entertain a motion to approve our meetings from the June 2nd.
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion by Pam. We have a second by Tom. All those in favor of approving the previous meeting's minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move down to item 5. The public hearing is now open. And Mr. Priestley, would you please read the staff report?
Yes, good evening. This public hearing is the follow-up public hearing for the Morningside University's conditional use permit to construct and operate a baseball stadium, a field for competitive athletic on the parcel identified as number 8847-143-00005 along County Home Road, Buchanan Avenue, and Old Highway 141 in that triangular area there as listed up on the screen. As this being a continuation of last month's public hearing, I will state for the record that the public notices and everything have been put out in terms of compliance for tonight's meeting. And as far as summarizing the meeting last month, the details were provided at the meeting by the applicant. We did have public comments that were presented at the meeting that did address some concerns, and the Board of Adjustment had decided to have tonight, to have this meeting again tonight to collect further information before rendering a decision on the conditional use permit process. In the meantime, the applicant has submitted additional information to address some of the concerns. And some of the concerns that came out of last month were traffic management concerns, infrastructure concerns, issues as far as noise control, lighting mitigation, parking, dust control, operational restrictions, etc. Concepts such as the alcohol policy, etc. But at this time, I would probably suggest to the chair that you move toward the applicant presenting their updates.
Okay, thank you for that overview, Mr. Priestley. I guess at this time, I would ask if there's someone here on behalf of Morningside University to please come up and address the board.
Hello, I'm Jason Reynolds, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Facilities at Morningside University. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We have updated quite a few of the concerns. I don't know if the best way to approach it, if you want to ask questions or if you just want me to go ahead and address them.
If you don't mind, if you'd give us an overview,
Sure.
then we maybe have some follow-up questions for you.
Sure. The big one for us was the traffic control. We've looked at having student workers at the field to help direct traffic through the lot. I've worked with Laura Sievers and the county engineers department on the lot itself, and then looking at traffic along 141. She was able to give me some information on some information on how to address any potential traffic impact through the Iowa DOT. I have had a traffic impact letter sent over to the Iowa DOT to ask for a study to be done to gauge just kind of what kind of traffic we have on that and what the requirements would be that would be needed to address, if we need turn lanes or lights, reduce speed limits, stuff like that. Dust control, I went out back out and looked. The property is surrounded by asphalt and concrete. There's really not a lot of traffic or dust control in that area. There is some gravel roads that run adjacent to the property. If they become an issue, I'm sure that Morningside is going to be more than capable of putting down calcium chloride and any kind of dust control that we need to. As far as the lighting goes, I looked into several different brands of lighting, and they'll be in your packet. Some of the best brands I found were lights that are LED direct lit with that have shutters on them that reduce light pollution. Essentially, if you move 20 feet away from the light pole and you're not under the light, you get to about 3% light pollution. So the way that those lights are squared away is to focus directly on what you're trying to light, not the surrounding area. We also looked at the same type of lights around the sides of the buildings that we put up, whether it be a locker room, concession stand, that type of stuff. We found wall packs that have the same properties that we can use to manage our light control so that we're not lighting up everyone's bedrooms. Noise control, I went through and followed. Woodbury County doesn't have a noise ordinance, so to speak, but I did look at venues that would be similar to ours throughout the country, and I believe it was 55 to 60 decibels is pretty much the going rate for decibel levels in a venue similar to ours. I have gone through and found amplifiers and programming that can control our decibel levels so that they don't go over. We program them for a hard limit so that you just can't cross that decibel level. Going along with that is the time of day. We wanted to put a curfew at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. on those games. We don't want them to run late, along with controlling decibel levels. And it also puts out a lockout for timing. Sound system shuts off at 10 p.m. or whatever curfew we deem to make it set for. And I worked with our VP for athletics and scheduling the games early having strict rules for curfew as far as rescheduling games if we can. Rescheduling if there's inclement weather. We'll follow that strictly. Trying to remember if there's anything else I needed to address. I think I ran through all of them.
So you're good with that for now then?
I believe so. I believe I
Okay.
put everything on the list that was brought up last meeting. Yeah.
Okay. I guess, are we good for a few questions from the board now, or would we? Okay.
I think so.
I guess, does anyone on the board have a specific question?
First of all, I want to thank you for all the work that you went to address the issues that we asked you to look into. It looks like you did a lot of studying and a lot of contacting, and you've been a very busy person since the last meeting. So thanks
Yes, ma'am.
for the efforts that you put forth to bring that information to us. I had a question about, I was just out there at the site and I wondered if you could tell me what is the closest residence that you have there in that area that might have an issue with the noise, the lighting or whatever? How far away is that closest residence? I couldn't, for the
think they're-
corn, I couldn't really see.
I think they're equidistant. I think so. We have a resident that's going to be east of the property. I believe it's Chad Hofer's.
Yeah.
He'll be across 141. He'd be east of 141 there.
Like by how far?
It's within 500 feet. So,
500 feet. Okay, so that might be a little bit of an issue for him.
and then to the north and northwest, and there's a property right there.
Okay, so that one's, kind of far away, so he shouldn't have too much. And that one that's 500 feet away, that might be a little issue for him, but, and I also wondered where the, parking and so forth for the general public was gonna be. Is that gonna, I'll let you tell me.
Sure. Okay, so if you're on Buchanan Avenue, which would be on the west side of the property, there's a large strip of parking there. And then to the south side of the property as well. It wraps around.
Perhaps.
So basically a parking that comes off of Buchanan and parking that's on County Home Road.
Okay, the perimeter right here. Okay,
140.
okay. And then that grassy area is over here. And, okay,
We did talk about overflow parking. It was suggested that if we put a line of trees in, which we're more than willing to do, that the property to the south of us, which is owned by the sheriff's department, could be used as overflow parking if we needed it.
okay, thank you.
Before we get a little bit further, is it okay if I ask our county engineer to approach the mic also, so we have some joint questions here maybe? Sir, you can stand back up here too if you don't mind, just in case we.
Laura
I-
Fevers, Woodbury County Engineer. And you had some questions or concerns?
Primarily, at the last meeting, a thing that was really glaring for, I guess, a lot of the public was the issue of traffic on this road because of bicycling, horse riding, just being in the rural part of the county. And that was something that I guess was really brought up numerous times. So we would like to hear your opinion on this if you have one and what you think we should be aware of.
Right, Morningside, Jason did reach out and ask about that, and I directed him that the DOT has a process called a traffic impact letter or a traffic impact study that requires an engineering firm to evaluate peak traffic that would be caused by this location. I think Walmart's, larger gas stations, you'll see turn lanes come into those locations. I don't know if it would on this. The local roads that we have surrounding this proposed development doesn't really have a ton of traffic. A little bit further towards the city, there is definitely enough traffic that would cause turn lanes to be put in, but Jason reassured me that they were going to look into getting an engineering firm to evaluate that traffic study. So I have no concerns with that. And the limit would be that they don't get the access that they need to the property if they don't do the study. So I'm not worried that that study is not going to get done, and that if it requires a turn lane to be put in, that they would just have to do that before they have their accesses built. So.
I guess this might be a question maybe for maybe both of you, but do you know, so there is a traffic study that has been initiated by Morningside College.
Yep.
Do you know when that will be finalized? So it's not finalized at this point then?
Correct. I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know.
We put the letter in, we haven't heard back yet. It's been just a little too short of amount of time to get the response back yet.
Okay. I mean, is this 30 days, 15 days? I mean, or I suppose if they're doing a study, they have to come out and actually physically.
Correct. Well,
And so none of
my
that
understanding
is,
is that our engineering firm will do the study with the IODOT. I don't know that for sure, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, there's satellite data that you can use to get traffic counts anymore. So I don't know if that's the technology that that company or whatever would use, but they may come out and actually physically do a traffic study, a traffic count there. So I don't know what their plans are, but.
okay. I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to the rest of the board if they have any questions for either one of you.
So one of the things that I just put into my phone, I know where the site is, but I put into my phone to see what route Google would tell me to go to that. And if you were on Highway 20, it brought you down Buchanan. And I think a lot of your traffic, they're coming into an area that they don't know. That is a strain. That's not the ideal corner right there, Buchanan and 141, old 141. We could potentially have tour buses coming down that, how do you feel we can maybe mitigate that intersection so that it was better?
As that would be a destination location, I believe DOT would allow signs that would take them on a 100% paved route location. So I think that would hopefully solve it. I don't know how you can talk to Google and those type of mapping companies to tell them to take a paved route versus, the gravel. Because I'm sure people don't want to take that anyways, that are coming to a ball game. So.
And I can follow up a little bit on that.
Sure.
I'm pretty confident that the majority of people that are going to our games are going to be coming from our campus.
Yeah.
Which would take you down 141, not necessarily down Buchanan. I think you might have teams, but I think that's something that we would work with opposing teams on. But yeah, I think parents are going to visit their kids first, then they're going to go watch the game. I think the majority of the people that are going to be coming to the game will be coming from our campus.
Does anyone else have any further questions for these two at this time? Okay.
One last thing. I just want to say thank you guys for doing your due diligence on looking at these developments that happen in our county. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate being able to be part of that discussion. So, and then to Morningside does a lot. I got little people and they provide a lot of camps and all that stuff for this. So they're more than just a university. I really feel like they are very active with our young people. And I really appreciate everything Morningside does for this area. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you don't have anything further for us, I guess at this time, I'll open up to the rest of the public if we have any further public comments on this application. Yep, just approach the mics and just state your name and address, please.
Hi there, my name's Doug Rush. I live at 1710 County Home Road. This first time seeing this picture, what my kind of concern is, what are the winters going to be like having that fence up there with all the snowdrifts we get out there already? How's that going to be for that part? And then like my other question, is it going to be hooked up to the city sewer water or is it going to have its own sewer water out in that area? That's what my kind of question is on that one. Otherwise, just living out there, I've been out there all my life there and never would have thought that being this close to home. Cause I know Chad Holfer and then a new neighbor right across the road, you got Tyler. They both got horses and everything. So that's what just concerns me is public getting too close out in the country. But that's about all I gotta really say about that. That's all my concern was about the drifting of gravel roads and all that, so.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would wish to address the board?
Could we go ahead and answer the question on the water and sewer?
Sure, you bet. It's well and septic. We have a detention pond that we'll be putting in. But yeah, well and septic, which are labeled there on the map there.
I would also imagine snow removal, if it's going to be that bad of roads, you're probably going to cancel the game, I would think.
Oh, yes, yeah, yep. And I would remind you that we have a 70-acre campus. We are very good at removing snow, so yeah.
Okay.
As far as the fence, the exterior fence of the property will be just a regular fence. There will be a fence around the field itself so that people can't get on the property there.
And you would, if in March, you definitely could have snow. So
Yes.
will your campus like maintenance people
Yes.
be out there cleaning the snow off the parking lots and
It might be me, yes,
Yeah,
actually.
okay.
I would
but
doubt.
not you wouldn't get involved with the roads. That would still be up to the Woodbury County secondary roads to do that, right?
It's correct.
Yeah.
Yep. The roads themselves will be handled by Woodbury County. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Severs, if you don't mind, do you have a comment on, fence and snow drifts and things like that, of that nature? Have you have experience with that?
Right. We do have always concerns when anyone's going to build a structure right next to our right of way, right? It can sometimes affect how snow does land when it's blowing especially. So an open fence, I don't know if that would really be of concern. It might slow it down, it might stop it, but we're pretty good at getting out there. And obviously, if this is going to attract more traffic, then we put it as a higher priority. So I think we'd be able to handle that.
Anyone else from the public once again? Okay, how about on the phone, Dan? Do we have anyone on the phone on this particular conditional use?
We do, but I don't think it's for this item.
Okay. Any of you directors have any further questions? Anyone at this time? I know in review from our meeting last time on June 2nd, the 10 p.m. curfew, that was something we threw out there, just as just a time, and you guys are okay with that 10 p.m. curfew? You could work with that? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have an issue.
The lights you talked about, we didn't know what kind you were going to put up, but now have you picked the kind of lights you would put up, or you just?
Picked the specific ones, but I've got a group of, I think, 3 different brands that we've looked at, or I've looked at. They all generally do the same thing. There's forgetting the actual brand name of the Lyra, Lyra is the name of the actual product. It has a similar wall pack to them. So it seems like that would be the right one to go with, because we could get a package deal on purchasing game lights and facility lights. So.
And the game lights, I think you had mentioned these are more directed or had shielding around them to maybe
Correct.
minimize the noise pollution on the potential nearby
Light
neighbors.
pollution, yes.
Yes, yeah, and the light
20%.
pollution.
It's
Yep.
significant too. It's I visited a field recently, and I was 20 feet from the post, and I was standing in the dark. It gave me 3% residual light, but it really felt like I was standing in the dark. So
Okay.
It still amplified where you needed.
the field was completely lit. Yeah, it was
That's cool.
something I hadn't noticed until I was there. So yeah,
Also at the last meeting, I get noise was a little bit of an issue too. And it sounds like you have found a sound system that was adjustable per se, or,
Adjustable and programmable. Yeah, but the programmable part is important to me because it allows us to have somebody that can put restrictions on it that can't be changed. So an administrator to the programming. So yeah, we can program it so that it doesn't go over the 55 to 60 decibel level, and then we can program it to turn it off, which is, I think, is equally important to make sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do.
okay. I don't believe I have any further questions for you at the time. Does anyone else on the board have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess at this time, I feel that we could close the public hearing. You guys okay with that? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing then.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion by Doyle. Do we have a second? Okay, second by Pam, to close the public hearing. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Yeah, that motion carries. Okay, I guess I'll turn it around amongst ourselves here. Do you guys have any questions that you think we haven't answered or need to be asked?
Okay. I think that, they did a great job of answering what we asked them to do and getting that information to us. And so I just think they did a good job.
I remember, just from the last meeting, it seems like the biggest issue I think that stood out was just the traffic flow and the worry of the traffic. It sounds like we do have, a traffic study, although it's not completed. Do you guys feel like that needs to be completed before there's a decision rendered, or do you think we could render a decision with some kind of a condition? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we could could we make it contingent upon the study being completed?
Yeah, that can be definitely a requirement that it must be done.
We must, yeah.
Well, just completing it doesn't do anything if you got to look at it.
And then addressed, and then the issues addressed, which I'm sure once they tell what needs to be done, then, something will get taken care of.
But I guess as staff, I would want to point out that, like Doyle had mentioned there, Mr. Turner, that just because you do a study, there's consequences of a study that leads to possible changes. And for example, what could the study ultimately lead to? If there's turn lanes, what happens with the turn lane? Would there be the requirement of pulling extra right of way into the public side, and would that change the actual layout of the development plan? So that would be my concern from the staff standpoint, is how much would this concept that's been presented to the public under the current existing lines, and we have a change to the actual public infrastructure, is it going to change generally the layout of the property in some form or not? I think that's kind of you look through the crystal ball, and typically with a development plan, you want it turnkey, where you pass it and this is it. This is what we're going into it. So the staff's a little bit uncomfortable with hypothetical and sometimes conditions can serve to alleviate the hypothetical as far as we get to this here, but we got to have it approved in a way that we know that, okay, this results in upgraded infrastructure. What's that upgraded infrastructure going to look like? And so do we have a mechanism built in that it comes back to the board in some form, whether a condition, in other words, you meet this condition, you come back and show us exactly what it looks like in some form or another. Now
Can we do that?
the issue with the way that these public hearings are, and this is a weakness of the way the ordinance is written actually, is that we have the zoning commission review, we have the public hearing, and then we're held to render a decision 35 days later. We're at that point here right now. And to me, if there's any cloud of uncertainty whatsoever, you either have the conditions written in a perfect way that the applicant is happy with the conditions, the county is happy with the conditions, and we find a route forward on that hopefully the public is okay with as well. But the other path is if we don't know enough and the criteria is not clear enough to say that we can confidently say that the traffic mechanism in our criteria is not clear enough, there is the potential to deny based on the understanding that they get the information, bring it forward, in a sense, reset the application. And I'm only talking about it from a procedural standpoint because of the fact that we're past the 30 some day mark. We have flushed a lot of this out, I believe as well. I think county engineer was very helpful tonight on showing us, what the mechanism is of that study. But the true definition of a development plan is having the information in there of what the development will be. It's having the turnkey on what that specific information is at this time. How I would love to have it turnkey, I would just point out that procedurally, maybe getting that information, and again, this is because of the way the ordinance is designed, I would probably suggest we'd have to bring it back in some form or the other, whether through a robust condition or whether a denial to reset. And the problem is with a denial, they have to come back a year later unless the Board of Adjustment agrees to reset the application as far as under the realm of new information discovered. In other words, how that would work is next month, we could have an agenda item that says that Morningside could have their application seen again. And then they could come back and run it through and have everything we're looking for, have the development plan entirely laid out the way that the Board of Adjustment expects, and then just basically run it through that level. Of course, it would be a reset of public hearings and the zoning commission would have to see it again as well. So just, again, this is for procedural purposes that I'm mentioning.
So we would have to. So we would have to deny it first to get that to happen.
Technically, depending on working with the college, it would be a denial with an explanation. So it'd be a resolution saying that it is denied because it's not meeting the criteria. If you're looking at it from the traffic standpoint or the clarification, because we do have the word traffic as part of the criteria there. So it would probably take next month having an item, even if they don't even have the study done next month, I would suggest we put it on the Board of Adjustment agenda next month where Morningside would agree to say, we're bringing the application back. And then you would basically vote to allow them to bring it back so that they're not barred by the year requirements. So
'Cause I don't think we want to do that and make it barred for a whole year.
No,
no, that, and staff would suggest that there's a path forward in terms of working with all sides. It's just when you're dealing with infrastructure, they have to consider costs too. I imagine it would, I don't want to say that, of course, I want to put myself in the shoes of the applicant and understand, what they have to deal with. But I think they would internally have to, if they're told that there's got to be an infrastructure investment, they would need to know that for their development, their bottom line and everything as well, so that they can react. So I know they have a time frame and they're looking at getting started on this as soon as possible. And things could play out very well, that the traffic study says, hey, this current plan is just fine. And then that makes it even better in the sense. But I guess as staff, I get a little bit of heartburn under the sense that we're not quite there as far as the clarity on the criteria on that specific measure.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Priestley, for that explanation. So it's kind of like I was thinking, there is two potential ways out of this. We could potentially approve it, with conditions. But if we do that, we're gonna have to be pretty, to the gnat's eyebrow on the conditions. That's the one thing that caught me off guard a little bit, that the traffic study, wasn't completed. What's that gonna look like? So we have that option if we do come up with some conditions to approve. But it sounds like if we wanted to wait until that was done, it sounds like we could potentially deny, but waive the 1 year reapplication deadline to try to fast track it. So I guess, in my opinion, I think that's the two options we have, since we're at that 35-day time frame. So I guess I'd open it up to you guys and see what some of the opinions are then.
And I would suggest bringing Morningside into that conversation too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we bring them up first?
It's a matter of discussion for sure. So
Do you guys, would you like to hear more from Morningside representative first?
Yeah, I guess I would like to know your opinion. There's a good chance that either way we go, it's gonna be the same amount of time. You know what I mean? Because I'm not expecting this study to take forever. So if we deny it and you come back, or if we put limits on you, and we're guessing at what it's going to say, it's going to be about the same. My own personal feeling, it's going to be about the same amount of time either way. Is that fair?
I think so. It's just kind of logistically, again, the way we're in this situation because the ordinance did this to us as far as that 35-day clock, as far as the tabling, to get these conditional use permits to fit correctly under the public noticing and all the regulations. The ordinance basically says that they've got to render the decision, and it's usually with approval with conditions or limitations. You can look down that route under the approval with conditions or limitations, maybe putting a contingency on there as far as that they shall follow the traffic study. I think the county engineer made a reference to that being part of the driveway scenario there. So maybe there's a possibility to look at it from that route, as far as it could be, depending on the outcome of the traffic study and how it triggers that driveway situation, and their work with the county engineer, whichever way it comes out. It could be a possibility. My only concern would be that this could open up another level of what if the right-of-way line changes? There's an acquisition of property to another way that actually changes the lines. Then ultimately, potentially, the supervisors would have to become involved as far as dedication of public. And if the parcel changed in any way, that even a variance could be required as far as the placement of structures. Because we do have to keep in mind that plan right there is designed in a way to, they were very mindful of the setbacks when they put this together here and placed it. And I know Jason went back a few times to kind of finesse that with their person at the company there. So they were definitely mindful on that. So we kind of open up the level of, okay, what's next? It's sort of like the law of unintended consequences. You go this route, here's consequence A, B, and C. You go this route, and I agree with Mr. Turner that yes, there are routes to that, and how can we best deliver on what those are? And so either conditions that we report back to the Board of Adjustment later on a certain, if a condition can be met or not met, the resolution would have to point to that if it's not achieved, then it's null and void. Therefore, the conditional use permit is therefore not approved. So we kind of run into that situation as well. So there's kind of a can of worms in a sense on both ways. as far as you go. The reset, if all goes well and this Board of Adjustment agrees to the reset, that sort of kind of cleans the slate and it says, here's the new development plan. But we'd have to, in a sense, have some assurances that it's part of the resolution, and then we bring it up in the agenda again later on. The one drawback of the reset is you have to submit an application, hence another fee and another process and that too. So
How much is the fee?
I think conditionals, or was it 300?
Is that a problem? If we go that route?
We probably don't have the authority to waive it. If we're waiving the, if we go down that road potentially, if we can waive the year, but we can't waive fees or anything like
We
that.
don't have that as a board.
Sure.
Does it matter to you?
I think Mr. Priestley nailed it for me. We've had the initial use permit in. I've gone back several times to work on it. Morningside's dedicated to this, and I think approving a conditional use permit with conditions that are reliant upon the study, we've gone through the due diligence repeatedly, and we're going to again. But that's your decision. So I would respect it either way. But this is something that we've been working on quite a bit. I've been working on quite a bit. And yeah, I depending upon the traffic study itself, it changes our business plan. So we would have to evaluate that as well. But I think that in itself is part of the conditional use. So.
Does anyone else have any further questions, comments? Okay. Okay, thank you. So I guess opening this back up to ourselves again. What do you guys think of approval, with conditions?
I think we would be opening a can of worms for everybody because we're trying to guess at the unknown. And I come back to, I don't think time-wise, it's going to, either way we go, I think it's going to be about a certain amount of time for them to get the study done. And in that amount of time, we can have meetings and get this done. I would lean more toward denying it and allowing them to bring it right back whenever the study's done.
I agree with Doyle. I think that might be the cleaner way to go, to deny, but if they get it all, the study done and figure out what route they're going to take with those traffic issues we talked about, that if they can bring it right back the next month, and we could get an answer.
Yeah, logistically, we would ask to put something on a statement out of Morningside that they want to continue with this, which I'm pretty sure you want to continue with this, but we would put just a statement on the next board meeting asking the Board of Adjustment to approve that, so that we get rid of the year blockage as far as that just makes it free and clear in the Board of Adjustment minutes that they could resubmit the application. And I think that, with the exception, I think Jason did a good job and his team of putting together the information there. It's just, they did what was expected as far as approaching the county engineer, and it's just that those studies do have a ramification as far as the fork in the road. It may come out that there is an infrastructure argument there. I will point out that it kind of goes without saying, but Old 141 is an important route for dispersing people throughout the county. People come and go on it all the time. And one way or the other, a baseball field does change the way of life out there, especially during the events. We can argue that when it's not being used, it flows, but there will be times that things do change out there. And we have to be mindful when we look at these criteria very carefully. It's not a good business for the Board of Adjustment to be in to guess on a policy. The goal is to know on a policy, and any ambiguity, that's the purpose of having a study, is to see one way or the other. The good part is the application materials are in order for the most part, with the exception of the study as far as that piece there. Again, the location, conditional use permits are truly about scrutinizing whether the location at hand is appropriate or not based on the criteria. There's different locations in the county that might fall under a different set of understanding through the criteria. And that's where we've got to be very careful in terms of explaining this. We've come to this because this is by Old 141, which is a high speed limit trafficked area there. And just putting in the ballpark without doing the due diligence on this aspect is kind of owed by to look into it. And again, I think it's something that we might want to look at as a county in the future as far as the time limit on the 35-day. As far as these applications, we know, I think this is a big example, and having an applicant such as Morningside will kind of help us point out that development projects are intricate. There's a lot that goes into them. The applicant is expected to do a lot as far as putting together the plan. When you come into a conditional use permit process, it's designed to learn from the public. When we get these packets and we get the application, that's only part of the story. The reason we have public hearings is to collect information from the neighbors, from the community as a whole. We learn more at these public hearings, and we have to use it as part of our entire criteria for understanding the sufficiency of a conditional use permit. And in this very case, we learned from the public as far as the culture and the traveling and the roads out there. And it is a triangle area that is surrounded by concrete and or blacktop, or however we want to call the surface. But with that said, there are situations, and I think it was alluded to by the necessity of mentioning the study, that falls right smack in the middle of our criteria. And it's tough to ignore that. And kind of with that said, I think that 35-day juncture is why we're in this problematic situation. Because if we didn't have that number there, I would just say table it. Let's wait till September or something like that. But I think if we look at it logistically, hopefully we all can kind of work together as far as getting through those checkpoints again. Nobody likes to hit the reset button because it sounds like everything we did doesn't matter, but it does matter because you put a lot of work in, and it's truly not a reset. It's an ordinance, and it's language that trapped us in this sense. So I hope the county will look at that in the future as well.
So hypothetically, Dan, if this, was denied tonight, they've done the legwork on pretty much the entire application already, so that would not have to be redone other than the traffic study and the information we're requesting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, one of the things to look at is obviously the glaring issue is the traffic study. And like I said, they brought a lot of good information together. And I will read to you, just so we know where we're going, the ordinance here. Under the conditional use permit process, section 2.02 of the ordinance, which I have up here on the wall. We go down and it talks about decisions. Right here, successive applications. And this is where we would have to look at getting around. If any application, appeal, or other request pursuant to the ordinance has been denied, no application for similar action may be initiated with 1 year. Here's the exception, and this is where we would need Morningside on the page, same page with us. If the administrative official or body, Board of Adjustment, which originally decided the issue, determines that either conditions have changed, new or additional information is available, or a mistake of law or fact was made, a new application may be considered. And so we can say that new information is being brought to the table. Logistically, we would have to deal with a request within 1 year for consideration for an action that has been denied shall be forwarded immediately to the official or body. So I would ask if Morningside would do that, to request it right away, and we put it on the agenda to reactivate it, basically. And then we go down to look, the official body shall review the request, and appeal or request may be placed on a subsequent agenda. So that's what I was referring to. We'd bring it back next month and ask the board to vote to be able to see the application again, under the premise that they're bringing new information to the board. So I think that's logistically how that can be managed.
If they have the information, then could we approve it then?
We would need to fire off the public hearing and
Okay.
do the notice. That when they say no public hearing here, what they're referring to is an administrative action of the Board of Adjustment making a decision, like an agenda item, kind of like not so much an information item, but a non-public hearing agenda item. The supervisors do these all the time, like approving a subdivision is just an agenda item. You all would be on the spot for making a decision to approve the incoming application.
So September would be the soonest we could actually approve this.
Technically, if it magically reset, we would need the application before the first of the month. Run the let me think here. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying there, Doyle. As far as next month would be August, and if that was on the agenda item there, you all could approve that as far as seeing it again. But if they concurrently drop the application in, we could put it on the zoning commission that month, still August.
Okay.
And then have the public hearing the first week of September. So I think logistically, we're in shape to do that if that study comes in. And specifically. The only other can of worms, again, please don't let that be the phrase of the night, is if you find out that you're going to have to put those lanes in, it's going to go to that infrastructure cost and everything of that nature. We don't know if you can use that existing right of way to expand that, or if it's going to affect. And when we look at the county home road here, I've noticed that the right of way is a bit wider on Buchanan. When we go through here, we're dealing with about 120 foot. That's not your typical 33 center of the road. That's that's what, 60 center of the road on in. So I don't know logistically where they would put those lanes, but we look at, the right of way on Old 141 is about 100 there. So that puts you at 50 feet right of way. So depending on what comes out of that and how the existing right of way could technically be used, we just don't know how those lines might shift or not. And the reason I bring all this up is if anything like that, if infrastructure changes a parcel in any way, shape, or fashion, it could actually end up throwing off the plan a bit. And we kind of go back to what we were doing with those setbacks and things like that. So it can get cumbersome for sure, but that's the essence of the study.
Okay, I guess I've been jotting some things down as Mr. Prusi's been talking here, and you guys have, kind of made me aware of what your thoughts were. A potential motion that I had in mind could say something like, we would put forward a motion to deny the conditional use permit as presented due to lack of finalized traffic study ensuring public safety on and around Old Highway 141. I'd follow that up by saying we hereby waive the 1-year reapplication rule in order for Morningside College to reapply at their leisure with the new requested information. Did you detect any problems with that verbiage there, Dan?
I think you can mention that as your desire or will.
As part
or
of the
as part
motion.
of the, as part of the denial. I think logistically, to meet the ordinance criteria cleanly, I would suggest we bring it back at least through a statement next month for you to approve as a officially published agenda item. And I think that that resolution would also extend the hand to Morningside to say that even though this sounds like this is a denial, the attempt is to work with them on a pathway forward as far as clarifying, because like you alluded to there, the insufficiency on not having that data or that information is not enough to approve if you're taking that route.
Would it be appropriate for me to put forward that motion then?
I would probably suggest that the board members all kind of
Okay.
engage on that a bit.
I'll pass this down, and it's what I wrote. If you guys can read my chicken tracks and see what you think briefly here.
Good to know.
So this is it right here, Pam.
That sounded good to me. Yeah, I'd go for that. I'll make a motion for that. You want me to read it into the record?
Yeah.
Yes, if you don't mind, Doyle.
Make a motion to deny the conditional use permit as presented due to lack of finalized traffic study ensuring public safety on and around Old Highway 141. We hereby waive the 1-year reapplication rule in order for Morningside College to reapply at their leisure with the new requested information.
Okay, with that, we have a second. And seconded by Tom. Okay, is there any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, guys. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move down to our next agenda item. And I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on that. And Dan, would you please read that into the record?
Yes. Just a moment here. I need to,
That's fine. Take your time to get your bearings here.
yeah, I need to get that file adjusted. When you move this around, it throws off the whole document. Oh, I wrote the number in. Go to a direct. Okay, so the public hearing's open?
Yes, the public hearing is open for this next respective agenda item. Yes, the public hearing is open for this next respective agenda item.
Okay, this application is from Rent Properties, Kevin Heiss, the owner, Rent Properties LLC, submitted a conditional use permit application to construct and operate a 14 by 48 LED billboard for off-premise advertising. This property is located in the north 2/3 of the north half of the north west quarter, section 6, township 8646, identified as parcel number 884606100002. This is proposed to be situated along the south side of Highway 20 and east of Charles Avenue. The property is located in the general commercial zoning district there along the Highway 20 corridor, where off-premise advertising signs, that should be signs, are classified as a conditional use under section 3.03.4 and section 5.028 of the Woodbury County zoning ordinance. The Woodbury County Zoning Commission did send their recommendation over to you. Chair Chris Zelmer-Zant had signed a letter to the Board of Adjustment that was included in the packet that had the recommendation there of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Just a few things to look at before the applicants kind of approach is there's a few, under our billboard regulations, there's a few stipulations in there about placement in terms of setbacks. And you might initially think, wow, that placement is quite south of the right-of-way line. And so they kind of have it further south than what you might normally see under standard general commercial zoning district setback standards. And there's a stipulation in the ordinance that they've got to be 1,000 feet from other billboards, and they've got to be 1,000 feet from agricultural estates, AE zoning districts, not houses on AP, AE zoning district. And so the applicants put a lot into trying to find the ideal location as far as what the zoning standards are in terms of locating it there. And I will say they worked through several challenges on this as far as there's a floodplain there. There's a zone A floodplain, but there's also a floodway there, as you will see the stream there to the east there. And they have done their floodway work as far as contacting the DNR. At one point, I know they've had a BFE for the property there. And I put up on the screen there is we've got some data there that the DNR ran, kind of showing us where the floodway is. This map doesn't do it justice, but the blue is your typical zone A or zone approximate floodplain. The rest inside of the gridded area would be the flood way. And the best way to describe the floodway is being inside of the stream or where it's going to instantly flood into. Now, using the DNR data, we have several models here kind of showing you setbacks. Forgive me for going through this kind of fast. I'm trying to get us to, here's some data here where the DNR gave us some GIS data that we kind of plopped on an aerial through the Google Earth. And you'll see here, this generally shows that they're clear of that floodway scenario. And based on that, that puts them back into the normal floodplain development permit, which staff can administratively handle after a decision has been rendered at the Board of Adjustment level here. So I just want to make that really clear.
That red circle, that was the intended location.
Yeah, so that's kind of like an above ground view, kind of drop in the data, because they gave me their GIS file as far as that other map that you saw. And once you get into the 3D effect, it's kind of tough to see. Those parcel lines are kind of barely showing in there, but we've got reasonable confidence that it's not in that floodway based on GIS data. Going back to the setbacks here, they have to go through an application process through the DOT. for having a billboard on Highway 20. And this triangular area kind of shows there are no billboards allowed on a corner area according to a DOT regulation. Theirs, of course, to meet the county regulations, push it further south based in that area. Trying to get to the one where they have the drawing with the setbacks kind of shown. There's several of them. This right here generally shows them measuring from the AE zone up here to the other billboards here. And you notice they jog it down to the south further a bit. And so that basically puts it right in the farm ground area there on the general commercial location. And again, this is one of those V-shaped LED. For the record, the LED where they can change the scene as far as that respective billboard. But the zoning commission, there were several folks. I know Dana Neal's on the phone as well. I know you spoke at the zoning commission meeting, and one of the things, of course, they're interested in the effects that it would have on the neighborhood, lighting and logistical standpoint there. So that kind of came out of the commission meeting. The other aspect that kind of came out of the commission meeting, zoning boards a lot of times don't get excited about talking about variances, or because variances kind of negate setbacks and the regulations. But there was kind of a reference there about if the signs were pushed further to the north, that would have to take a variance, and not because of the zoning district setbacks, because I believe the general commercial are technically 50. But the reason they have these setbacks here is all because of where the other signs are located and because of where the other districts are located. So again, the applicant presented this proposal to be, in a sense, compliant with the appropriate distances and everything of that nature. So that's the effort that they put in from here. Again, that's all I really have at this point. So I would suggest having the applicant approach and discuss. And of course, we have public here as well who will likely like to add to the discussion. So I will pause.
Okay, with that, is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of this proposal?
It's on. Perfect.
Just remember name and address, please.
Yes, Kevin Heiss, 204 Buckeye Circle in Lawton, Iowa. So a couple things that we were meeting compliance in terms of the setbacks. We have a strong belief that, and talking to the planning and zoning, they would like to see the sign moved further north. The DOT requires a 300-foot distance. Woodbury County requires 1,000-foot distance. I believe that's correct, Dan, as far as we know. So we're asking for approval where it's at today, but if there's an opportunity and there's an agreement, we believe that where the sign belongs is closer to the road. Therefore, further from neighbors as well, less lighting issues, which we did get a lighting study back. We got that back today, this afternoon. We actually just emailed it to you, Dan. It's in your inbox, and we can go through some of that data, and we have copies if you want to see that lighting study and how that would work towards the neighbors if we're allowed to present that.
Yeah. Do you have enough for
Yes.
the board
Yes.
members?
Yeah, we have.
I would just ask that one of the board members entertain a motion to receive that into the record.
Perfect.
I make a motion to receive.
Okay, Motion received. Doyle's made a motion to receive. Pam seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all
I'll
in
bring
favor,
it
say aye.
forward.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay,
Slater Road, 527 Sandstone Circle, Dakota Dunes, South Dakota.
Excuse me, I didn't catch your name.
Slater's the first name, last name's Ohm, OHM. And I'm going to approach, if that's okay.
yep.
There'll be two documents for you guys. One is a graph laid out on the property in question. The second is a. Here's an explanation. Yeah. These are an explanation of what we're.
Because this was a concern from some of the neighbors and we wanted to make sure that we went back, because the back of the signs, essentially they're in a V. So the back of the signs is where the lighting study is done because the others are facing the highway. So it was the people that were behind the sign that had some questions, Dana and maybe some others.
So this is a double-sided sign or is it?
It's a V sign. So there'll be a sign this way and a sign this way,
Oh.
both facing the highway, nothing on the backside.
So it would be viewable from both directions of traffic.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, sir. And Slater, if you want to just talk about kind of the results.
I'll walk you through it. First of all, this is from Daktronics. It's the board that we're going to purchase to put on here for granted access. Really nice product. It's about the size, it's the shape of a piece of pizza. Think of it that way. So the front of it's at 0 degree, the back of it is at 18 degrees. Okay. And it's facing east and west, really northeast and northwest, if you will. The grid that's laid on here, I had to actually ask them to go to 1,000 feet. They normally stop the light leakage studies at 750 feet. So on my request, they moved it out to 1,000. The reason it's important is we had a caller in the first meeting that was worried about light leakage. I get it. I understand. He is directly on the graph in front of you at the 40-degree mark. If you see that home stuck right there. Right there. Okay.
The green grass.
Yeah, beautiful. Great location for a house. The light leakage at that point he's over 1,000 feet away from the structure. The light leakage rating at that distance is 0.01 foot candles. Okay. The second sheet I sent you and the first bullet displays what a foot candle is. It's a wax candle lit at the distance of 1 foot. That is 1 foot candle. Okay. The light leakage at this property is 0.01. It's 1% of one candle. Very little. And so we had that run. I apologize that it took so long for them to get it done. You'll notice that the graph itself is marked 7.2, but we didn't get the explanation of what it was until today. And so that's why we didn't submit earlier. So Mr. Priestley could have put it in the packets. Any questions on that? And again, that's at the current location that's on the board behind you. If we were to move that to the north, it would even be less light on that particular home. And that's a lot of the discussion from the last meeting.
How far north were you wanting to go?
It's roughly 200 feet. It's roughly.
Where we want to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
North.
Still still off of the highway.
So where all those lines intersect on the last graphic that Dan had up, it would be 200 feet north. Still outside of that daylight area that the DOT requires, still outside of the setbacks.
So that'd leave you about 100 feet off the road.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. There's a lot going on right there. There's a road, there's a little bit of an access road that's dirt that gets into that field. The road curves to the left, Charles Avenue curves
Mhm.
to the west or east, excuse me.
So we'd stay away from that. We would stay away from that corner, but ultimately, it would be about 100 foot, a little over 100 feet off the road. And that's, if you look at the current signs and the location of the current signs, this would line up as far as distance off the road with the current signs that are along Highway 20 if we moved it forward. Again, the DOT requirement is 300 feet and it's 1,000 feet for Woodbury County. So that's why we moved it to begin with, because originally we had information at 300 feet. That's where we placed it. And then we worked with Dan, and Dan's been very helpful in getting us down a lot of paths to make sure we crossed the T's and dotted the I's. And I think we've done that at this point to place the sign where it's feasible. And, you know, we want to make sure it's good for what we're doing and what we're trying to do. You'll see a lot of these signs going up and down I-29, if you will, and there's some in Sioux City, I believe, too. So already.
So if we go to that point, that would put that house, rather than being at the 40-degree mark, really close to the 60-degree mark.
Yeah, I'd have to do the angles, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And
gonna be somewhere between 50 and 60.
And now right now it's a little over 1,000 feet away. It'd be, 1,100, 1,150 away,
Mhm.
probably.
Further away.
Further.
And
away,
that gets it at 0.00 foot candles.
I can't guess, but it'd be less.
Well, that's where the 60 is. You know.
That's good.
Mr. Heiss, could I ask you to just look, and I kind of drew on there what my concept was of what you're trying to do with the
Yeah.
shape and so forth and the position.
Sure.
Is that, am I assuming properly that that's where?
Yeah, your piece of pizza is really big though. You gotta make it a small.
Make it a smaller
It's only an
piece.
18.
Oh, okay, so it's got,
And I know Dan Priestley has the mock-up of it.
so more like that.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, that file didn't come in.
I filed in. from
Yeah, I
well,
was,
If we had someone that understood IT a little better, we could
Yeah.
see. We'll read.
It's coming off my phone, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just no attachment, so.
But it is basically what you have in front of them.
Yeah,
we'll
because
get it
I was gonna put that up there for everybody, but.
Yeah. Sorry.
I guess not to interrupt in the middle, but just one quick question I had. So if you would, in a perfect world, you'd like to move it north another 200 feet. What does that do in the separation of the 1,000 foot from the other billboard? Does that make it like 700 other billboards, or is that?
Yeah, the
We
best way to describe it is they strategically found that location to meet those requirements that are before you there. This part of the ordinance says 1,000 feet between off-premise signs, and then it says 1,000 feet from AE in our SR zones. So basically, they presented it in a way to meet that, but then it even was alluded to in the zoning commission meeting that, well, it'd be nicer if it could be further north, but then that's what it collides with is that part of the ordinance there. Now, again, a variance is something we don't, get excited about because they are contrary to what ordinance requirements are. It's something that we just would not go out there and go, yeah, you need a variance or that type of scenario. But there's a couple things that have recently transpired. The new state law, as far as being able to relax certain setback standards, this could potentially be considered in that realm. And if they were to ask to move it further north, they would have to approach the Board of Adjustment again and ask for a variance to alleviate this subsection 8 here, where it says in the general commercial district, you have these required separation distances. So they're basically at 1,000 right now. And if they push it north, it's probably going to jog it down probably 900, 800-ish,
High eights.
Yeah.
or in there somewhere. And so again, that shockingly, that's a whole other case. In other words, it becomes a whole other agenda item and a full other consideration. So you'd ultimately have to bring it back. Now, the Board of Adjustment could look at this and decide of it two ways. You could approve the request as is tonight, just fine, and then you could go along building it under your current proposal. You could also approve it and then put a line in there that they could come back potentially for a variance. In other words, you could open it up that it could be approved at this location or approved further north, contingent that a variance checks out. I'm always in the zoning chair. I'm uncomfortable with variances because ultimately you got to prove the practical difficulty, prove the hardship. I would have to transfer that back to you as the applicant to state that case. These board members work on variances quite a bit, and so there's a criteria that they would have to look at it with a fresh set of understanding on the merits of that application alone. The focus of tonight's meeting is at this location now. And so if this board identifies tonight that this is an insufficient location as far as lighting or various other issues that are discovered from the public, it could be approved contingent on the idea that a variance get approved. In other words, kind of kicking it down the road to the variance scenario there. It's sort of packaging it together.
We couldn't make it a condition to move it?
You, under the fact that you can't approve something that's contrary to the ordinance.
Right.
So,
That brings me to another question, that my original question. If we move this, then does it change the due process rights of new neighbors?
the variance scenario would be a reset or another application. The neighbors under conditional use permit are identified for the 500 feet within the certified abstractor listing. So it would be the same certified abstractor listing that would be, they get a letter saying that if you choose to file an application, it would be a very similar process, but you would not have the zoning commission involved. You would go straight to the Board of Adjustment on the variance. And so basically, it kind of comes down to if the board members see this as a potential option, they could signal that they'd potentially look at this through a variance that ultimately you're applying for. In other words, if you all think that, yes, we would like to see it further north, you would probably have to be the voice of the commission, or excuse me, the Board of Adjustment, in terms of, it's ideal more to the north in this scenario. And so, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves too, kind of at the same time. So there's a number of ways to look at it, but you can, if you find out that where it's currently located, if that's acceptable too, you could approve it that way too. If you don't find it acceptable at this location, potentially you could deny it, which would kind of be similar to the other one where you reset it, bring the variance in and kind of package it back together. Quite a bit of red tape there. So it just kind of comes down how the board would address this.
Yeah. Can I?
Okay, yeah, you could, I think we kind of interrupted your side, Jack, just so if you still have presentation to make, feel free to continue then.
No, I was just gonna suggest our goal would be to get an approval where the sign is currently located, if that's feasible, just the way it's laid out. And then if we come back, we come back. We would certainly consider that and like to do that. But at the end of the day, we'd like to seek approval because we've got some timelines on some of the pricing we've received from the manufacturer. And we need to kind of give them a yes or no and get some work scheduled with the contractors that are going to be putting the sign up, the structure and all that. So we will at least know we're moving forward And then if it was in the best interest of everyone and there was a variance approved to move forward, then we could address that with Dan and come back to the board at a later time. So that would be our goal tonight, if that's feasible for this group.
Okay. You guys have anything else to add, or are you open for questions from the board then?
We answered several questions for the planning and zoning that night. There was a lot of things that, and Dan has asked us to go through, and we feel like we've covered all that. But if there's additional questions that you might have, we'd be happy to answer those, and we appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Does any of the board members, you guys have any further questions for them at this time? Okay, seeing none, I guess if you two gentlemen don't mind, you can be seated then if you're done, and we'll open this up for members of the public now to comment.
And
We also have one on the
Dan,
phone.
we do have Dana on the phone. Dana, can you hear us okay still?
yes, I can hear you fine.
And we
So
hear you too.
Dana Neal. Okay, Dana Neal, 1774 162nd Street. Thank you guys for taking this into consideration. And I commend Mr. Heiss for going the extra steps. I really appreciate that, being a neighbor of this area. One of my concerns about their lighting survey, though, is so our home sits about 18 feet higher than the level of where, just level wise, we are up on top of a hill. So according to some of the designs and stuff of the drawings, that sign is going to be 17 feet off the ground from the base of it to a 14-foot high sign, which means it's directly shining at my home. And with the lighting surveys, those are done with that billboard 17 feet into the air, and the gentleman taking lighting readings at ground level, which we're going to be in direct vision of that. And I just want that to be, part of the consideration as you're making your decisions. Is this is something that I'm going to live with 365 days a year, probably for the next 20 years, until Kevin can get his investment back out of it. So it's not like something that happens a handful of times a year, or, this is 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day, potentially, that this sign is going to be, blaring light towards our home. And when we did move out to the country, the property around us was agricultural, and this is our family farm that we built on. And the reason we built on it and not build in Sioux City, where we could have built something, was because of having the county home living. And so I just want that to be a consideration as well. We're not opposed to having a sign. I would love to see that sign move to the north, or ideally moved on the other side of the creek. But that infringes upon a sign that's over there. So I understand that it's a tough situation for you guys, the Board of Adjustments. I would just, we want to be good neighbors. And just like when we had the cement plant that come in, we came before you and just said, look, we want you to be thoughtful of our home and, why we build it out there. And so that's all I'm asking.
Okay.
You guys have any questions for me?
Yeah,
Is
right
that
there.
where he lives?
That is, yep.
That is-
Yeah, Mr. Neal, this is Daniel Hare, Chair of the Board of Adjustment. I wanted to clarify, so it's your understanding, what was your understanding of the height of the billboard for this light study? Did you think it was just 17 feet off the ground, or what was your calculation there?
Well, I believe the light study was done at ground level, and the billboard sits 17 to 20 feet off the ground, and then there's another 14 feet on top of that. I didn't get a copy of the light survey. I'm just assuming that they went out and did this light survey from somebody on the ground and said, oh yeah, at this angle, it's going to be very little impact. And you're right, because light travels in a direct path. It's not going to shine down. That direct path is going to shine directly onto my home.
Okay.
So
I know it's hard for you to see. I do have the physical study in front of me here, and it does say that the calculations take into account an overall billboard height of 34 feet. I guess that is something we can ask the applicants of. So it does appear that the calculations were taken, with the billboard height of 34 feet taken into consideration. But that's a question we'll ask the applicants.
right, and I understand that, but where I'm saying is they took their light readings from the ground, at ground level. So there's a variance of 17 to 20 to 35 feet that I have an elevation on that sign that is about 22 feet. So as I'm standing, sitting on my deck looking straight across, I'm seeing the brunt of that sign. And that's all I'm getting at is light travels in a direct path, and it's going to travel directly into my home or onto my home. So anyway, that's just one of the things that I wanted to be considered when when you're looking at making your decision.
Okay. Do you have any further comments?
No, I thank you for you guys' time. I thank Kevin for his efforts. I'm not opposed to improving anything along Highway 20. And, hopefully someday my family farm can be incorporated into that. But at this time, I'm going to live here for the next 20 years. And I just want it to be pleasant.
Sure. Well, I guess I have one more follow-up question for you. On the light study survey they showed us, it shows at your particular location, if I'm reading this right, they believe the light that you would receive at your location comes down to 0.01 of a candle foot, which they explained was approximately 1% of a single wax candle, as viewed from 1 foot away.
Yep.
Were you aware of that before tonight's meeting, or what kind of brightness, I guess, did you expect you would see at your residence?
Was not aware of it. And like Kevin said, I think they just got the information and distributed it to you guys. So not aware of it at all. I just
Okay.
anticipate seeing, their pie-shaped design. There's going to be an impact on our location of some sort. And I have a hard time believing that it's only going to be, 1% of a candle foot light. I'm hopeful that it is. I absolutely would love to see that and to have no impact upon our home. But I have a hard time believing that, just looking at the location and how far it sets back off of Highway 20.
Okay. Thanks for that. Does anyone on the board have any questions for Mr. Neal at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I guess I will ask, is there anyone else from the public that would wish to address us?
Good evening, Jeremy Boatman. I live at 1762 162nd Street. So I live just higher up the hill from Dana. And I feel that Kevin had mentioned to you about your pie-shaped being too much of a diagonal and that it would be reflecting only up towards Highway 20. But if he says it's only 18 degrees, that's pretty much going to be posted east and west. And so I could come out my front door and then I'm going to have this giant lit up sign, all like Dana said. And we moved out there 13 years ago just to get out of the country or out of the city. My only other concern too, I am in the green, that little green box. Yeah. And so I see a lot of big cottonwood trees that are in the creek. So that telling me that sign's only going to be 17 feet off the ground and they're going to catch it coming from Lawton. I don't see that. So those are just a few of my thoughts. And considerations. I'm probably out of the 1,000 feet range, but I'm still there. So,
Are you just concerned with just seeing this in general? Or
yeah, and for the light, we have we're very fortunate. We have a patio pool out back. And I don't want to be, having light all the time. Because anybody's going to tell you, you stick a giant LED up in the air, it's going to emit some kind of light. Would it get to me? I guess we wouldn't know until the sign's up.
So would you also be wanting it to move farther north as well?
I would. And even like Dana said, across the creek would even be better. Because I bet you within probably 500 yards of a proposed sign, there's more houses than there is all the way from Grandy Avenue to Lawton. You got Dana and I are 3 there. You got 4 up Charles. You got all of old Correctionville Road. You have all of those houses that are heading back towards Sioux City. So, I mean, there's probably 10, 15 homes in 500-yard distance versus if you went further east towards Lawton.
Do you own the property further east? So if we were looking at a variance, which obviously we aren't
can
tonight.
you, just a second, Doyle, are you asking him a question?
Yeah, I
Okay.
asked
Can you
him.
approach the microphone?
Yeah, so I own the property further east. Yes, on the other side of the creek. Yes.
I'm assuming you,
We don't care.
okay.
I mean,
You answered my question.
I mean, we would certainly move it over there if that's where we land. And to your point, it is probably better there. So. And we would still be more than the 300 feet if we were in that area, but it's definitely not gonna be 800 feet at that point.
So what
I-
about this person that's here? Would they be complaining about?
He sent a letter, actually, Stefan Engineering, he sent a letter and said he was in full support of the sign.
That's a business.
Jerry?
Is that Jerry? Okay.
Yes. Right, but he sent a letter that was introduced. I know we're going down a path that.
Yeah,
we're gonna be, Dan,
we're
sorry.
getting it muddled together, and I need to correct myself from before with what Mr. Turner had said about the due process. When we do start to move it from a significant amount, we got to have this meeting again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I'm just saying it's gonna, we would actually have to run it, and technically you could run it concurrently, where we would run a conditional use permit process and then have an agenda item that would speak to the variance part too. So you would have to revisit the zoning commission in terms of moving the location, whether you do push it north or whether you go to the other side. And I think when you had your we'd have to look at your abstract listing too and how that picked up so many people. But I just want to make that clear and correct myself from Mr. Turner's great question from before. So.
So this is more a question for Dan.
Yeah.
When we have these setbacks of 1,000 foot and you can have multiple owners in that 1,000 foot, are we limiting their property as well?
Okay, let me break this down because the 1,000 feet as far as the AE setback or the billboard.
The billboard.
That billboard setback could be construed as a way of saying that it's the merit of where each billboard is located. So not everybody would have the opportunity to put a billboard in
Okay.
based
it-
upon that.
It
space.
would limit a neighbor's ability to put in a billboard.
It could limit the neighbor's ability as far as that spacing for sure. Cause I know that, again, this was my first one on getting a billboard application. I told the applicant that as well initially. And, he had to navigate through a lot in terms of understanding where those were. I remember right away telling the Slater and both Kevin that we need to know where those other ones are located because it affects you. It affects your process. So yes, it does.
So the state setback is how much?
The state put them at that 100 in the corner. Isn't that correct? Or you had the 100, the triangular 100 feet. That's for where did the state say that you had to be off the road right away? They deferred it to us. Okay, 500 from other boards. So the county, then everything relegates to the zoning district setback.
Mhm.
And so the zoning district setback on a corner would be 50 from the front line and 25 from the sideline. So, and that's without considering those other forms of setbacks.
So could we be getting ourselves, with our setback from the other, or could we be getting ourselves in a legal problem for limiting neighbors' property who aren't an applicant?
And that's a legal question, so got to be careful without relying on Joshua on that. But this ordinance did come from 2008. And if you look really carefully, they were real stringent on certain spots where billboards pop up. They make a reference to, I think, Highway 75 at one point, nowhere near the intersection. You probably saw that language there. So we have to go back to the mindset. And when the 2005 and the 2008 comp plan were put together, the DOT, I know, has been real restrictive in the past. I had learned years ago, and the DOT could kind of correct me on this, but they're not very friendly to rezoning ag to commercial for the purpose of putting up a billboard. So they're real stringent on that, what I've seen in the past, in terms of locating. I don't know if the policy has changed. That's what I was told in the past by Mr. Christian, in fact, who you probably worked with, but I see where you're coming from. As
So it
far
could
as
be, it could be considered an inverse eminent domain.
potentially, if you're looking at that respective opportunity
Yeah.
to put one in. I can see where you're coming from that angle.
And with the state kind of getting harder on counties for being more restrictive than the state on other issues.
Yeah, and something like that, if it were to go to a variance, would be a good question for legal.
Okay.
We have any more public comments? Sure.
So just to clarify, where the next billboard is, I actually own the property that would go all the way to the east here, where that AP is. There's a billboard right in the corner, on right there. So I own that property. So that billboard would really be the next one that would set the 1,000 feet. And if you go across the road, I own that property as well, and there's already billboards in that zoning, if you will. So if anything, today, the way it sits, it could open up more opportunity as opposed to less opportunity, if that makes sense, just the way the property lines are drawn. So it wouldn't necessarily restrict the next person that wanted to put a sign up if you did a variance.
Okay.
To
That
answer your
helps.
question.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And you've got to always be careful generally on variances. We historically look at variances on a case-by-case basis, unique to the property, because someone gets a variance doesn't necessarily mean that someone else's property meets that criteria based on the conditions alone. But granting a variance definitely puts that into the conversation on the next applicant, that so-and-so got a variance potentially. And so that we know that's the nature of zoning. So-and-so got that. And so therefore, but kind of with that said, it's always important to go back and look at each and every one of these merit the full scrutiny and look on the merits of each case brought before boards.
Can I ask you another question?
Yeah.
From marketability, sellability of your product, as far as the billboard, it's not gonna make any difference either way, is it?
That's correct.
Okay,
And we have several businesses that we would be marketing on that sign as well.
now, is that, what'd you say, 18-degree V? Is that adjustable?
No,
That's the way they're
It's-
made.
I mean, I'm not saying that we couldn't adjust it at the point of construction, but once the construction is done, that's what it is. We can't move it to 16
Right.
because of the way the structure comes in. I mean, the company that we're looking at comes out of Chicago to put that structure in place because we're using an existing company. We've got quotes from a couple companies, but this is what they do. They do billboards, and that's the company we're hiring to put up the actual structure. And then Daktronics would be the company that's putting up the actual signs. So we just by way of checking into things, we checked into electric and how that works. And Nystrom works a lot with a lot of the different highway rules and stuff like that. So we checked into that, and they have a plan to get that done as well. So we checked into a lot of those things before we came to you. And where the variance came from, that was out of the last planning and zoning meeting as a recommendation, not a recommendation, a discussion would be a better way to say it. Because of Dana and some of the others. We, like I say, we entertain whatever, but tonight is about approval where it's at.
Mhm.
Just by way of comment, we would wait to construct the sign for that process to take place if you so choose to allow us to do that. So
Okay.
we would wait that time frame. We just have some deadlines on
On getting it
cost and
purchased.
ordering and getting people in place. So
Only comment I have is you look at line 6, you want these things to dim at night. They'll maybe run 100% if it's bright sun hitting the sign in order for you to be able to read it. But it drops down 96% at night down to 4% of output.
Okay,
Okay. And then you add the grid that you have in front of you, it lessens it even further. So that helps us. You can read it. It helps us with power. It makes the LEDs last longer, those types of things.
so is the 18% like the maximum viewing that they get from the road? Is that why it's 18%?
In that size board, 18%, 18 degrees
Degree, that's what I mean.
gives you the most readability.
Okay, yep.
If you go a bigger piece of pizza, right? Let's say it's 40, it's great, but you're going 65 miles an hour. I think it said hot dogs,
Yep.
right? Or whatever we're advertising for that day. So
Yep.
that's typical. It's
Okay.
18.
Is that billboard, I take it as a 90-degree, the face of it's 90-degree from the highway, is that right?
No.
Oh, only, oh, okay.
So it's sitting like this, like I
Okay.
showed you, right?
Okay. Okay.
Could you hit your power buttons there so the red, did that shut off, Dan?
No.
Intermittently?
Well, it should be.
Oh,
This
yeah,
one's-
Both of them have to be red.
there you go.
There we go.
Okay. I guess a question I'm going to throw out there is, have you guys ever encountered this before? You know, where there's some concern by the neighbors in this light issue, where some kind of a straight shutter has been put on a sign like this, you know, that would block the light from going towards these residences? I mean, does that exist, or is that just?
Well, the two residents in question, they're over 1,000 feet and then probably 1,500 for the second one. I didn't do your measurement. I don't know if we could do a shutter that big, but we can look at that.
I mean, just the
There may be
shutter
some
that-
technology that we can add and see if it may reduce it.
Cause I'm just thinking of like you know, just a sun visor right on the side of that sign, 14-foot high, I guess. Is that right? What that sign would be? I didn't know if anything existed like that or not, but
The only,
a shield per
yeah,
se,
the
I
only
guess.
comment I would make is Daktronics, this is kind of the world they live in, and this is, we had these discussions, and I wouldn't add that unless it came from them and they recommended it, because we don't want warranty issues. We don't want the sign to not operate the way they've designed it. And part of their light study is why they do that. But if there's a solution that they offer, we will absolutely entertain that.
Okay.
I would just want it to come from the manufacturer.
Is there any other questions from the board directors?
So if we were to give you a permit tonight for this location, kind of a gentleman's agreement, for lack of a better term, that you would wait for the process and move it across the creek and come back for a variance.
Absolutely.
Get her again.
I knew I was gonna make you nervous on that one.
You're making me nervous because I was wrong before. I'll put it that way. The due process factor of moving it that far is tied directly to the merits of this conditional use
Yes.
permit. And so moving it does change that because they were noticed based on the location.
But would he own the property in that notification area?
Well, technically, yeah, I mean, that's the same part.
It actually makes it better. Because as far as there's less people,
Mhm.
he's affecting less neighbors. Correct?
That part is correct. It's this, when you're moving
Yep.
the actual location, even on a noticed parcel, it's so much of a change to a site plan that we gotta be real careful on that, to the point of almost, how could we could logistically look at it as far as noticing, kicking down the 35 days to the next meeting, re-noticing it, and then if you do the variance scenario, bring the variance in there, kind of package that together. Because this was your first meeting, correct? I know we had the zoning commission meetings.
Yes.
This board, this first.
Yes. See, they have the right to withhold it till they render a decision for a month. That's what happened with the previous agenda item. They were on their second meeting before this board for further clarification on that. If it's such an extreme, like if you moved it across the creek, it would definitely be a reset.
Yeah.
I'm just reading, board members, I'm reading, what we got from the zoning commission, and their first point was explore the feasibility of reducing the 1,000-foot separation requirement.
Yeah.
Is that what you would lean towards first? That's the variance process, though,
That-
isn't it? Rather than moving the whole thing.
That was their way of showing you that with the neighbors, in a sense, that they gleaned this from the neighbors who brought the point up to the commissioners as well. And like you said, it was part of the discussion there. So that is something that's, I think, pertinent for you to explore, quite obviously through this process. But the problem is you go to variance territory when you start encroaching on the setbacks that's are enumerated in the ordinance, and that's by nature of moving it to the north. But you're definitely within the scope of what the zoning commission asked you to look at.
Would it be out of the question to deny them and say, do a reset and come back with that next month with the moved across the creek and then
That could be a similar,
a scenario that
that could be,
happen, which
it would,
I mean, I'm of the opinion we've met the criteria that exists and we would like to seek approval. That's, and, you know, if I can give my word that we'll come back, but I don't want to walk away from here without an approval if we've met the requirements, if that's feasible.
may I ask him a question? I think, and kind of refresh me on this, but your general goal, and you stated it earlier, and you even alluded it to now, is you'd like to see approval as is with what you brought tonight.
I would, in the fact we want to get it ordered because of the pricing requirements and the logistics of getting the company hired that will be doing the work. So I would like to seek approval as is, and I guess that's all I'm allowed to say at this point, but I think you know where I stand overall.
I think I don't want to compare two projects, but we aren't waiting for more information here. They've given us all the information we need, and they've worked really hard to meet our stated qualifications, and they've met them. I'm more inclined that I agree that they've met them, and the neighbors here have voiced very well concerned, but also have been very amiable to working with him and recognizing that he's trying to work with them. I guess I feel like we can work with the situation different than if we were waiting for more information.
I guess the comment I would add, I mean, I understand the neighbor concerns. But this light study is brand new, you know, I mean, I get seeing it, I just don't know, you know, without being there, seeing it, you know, what it's actually going to be like at night. I get that concern there. The other thing I'm throwing around in my mind is, you know, that is commercial property where they are wanting to put the sign. So I mean, that is a place where a sign would, you know, be permitted.
So I guess what we're looking at is if we approved it the way it is, acknowledging that he's going to come back, we would have A, B, and C, where it could go here. He would have the permit to do that if we did that. But more than likely, he would either move it north or move it across the creek, being B or C, regarding on what avenue he asks for.
An option could be that you approve it where it's at and give them the potential option for the variance, or even put a contingency on there that you would like to see it at that location with the understanding that a variance is required. I know that sounds quite confusing.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we had a kind of a multifunctional, and I think Tom may have been the only member of the Board of Adjustment at that time, where we had a property owner out by Correctionville that was on a general industrial or a limited industrial parcel that was below the 3-acre criteria to conduct their business and to build a trucking terminal. And they were wanting, I think they wanted to, there was multiple things happening. There was a rezone happening, a conditional use, I think, happening, and a variance. I'd have to go back and look. There might be, you were on that too. Okay, you were too.
But I
Okay.
don't remember
But-
exact details.
But you issued a variance based on it being a smaller size for that, because it wasn't like legal non-conforming. Oh, they needed, the supervisors couldn't rezone it to LI with the smaller size. So the Board of Adjustment worked hand in hand with the supervisors to kind of make that happen. So it kind of, those two processes were kind of muddled together through the bigger scope or through the bigger development project. This would give me far more heartburn before the governor signed this latest legislation on it being a personal economic hardship / practical difficulty scenario, where now the variance is much more geared into the practical difficulty realm of specific to setbacks, adjustments to setbacks, which means you can be a bit more, I don't want to use the word reasonable, but not so much tied to, it's going to hit me in the pocketbook if I can't build it there. You basically had to say that the features of your land actually hurt you based on being able to put that structure there or not put that there. Well, the new legislation empowers the local boards of adjustment to look at just the practicality now behind the setback challenges. And so with that said, still as a zoning official, we don't like variances because they do go against the ordinance and what the intent is behind the ordinance. But within the realm of this this scenario, there could possibly be a contingency that we would likely approve it based on the successful achievement of a variance. That's really tough to do with the same board. It would be nicer to kick it off to another board to make that determination, like the supervisors. But I will have to say, in a way, a sense of fresh application. Technically, you'd have to fill out an application that responds to the variance criteria and convince this board that that hardship or that practical difficulty is there. I think kind of generally with what the neighbors have said, I think that goes a long way potentially on
I think
helping with that application. So
I think the fact that you affect less neighbors means a lot
Mhm.
in my mind. I mean, whenever you can affect yourself and not somebody else, to me, that just makes our job easier.
So technically you have 35 days. You received a recommendation from the zoning commission to explore that 1,000 feet. Well, we'll just think about this logically for a second. You've explored that a bit. So you could pause this decision for a month and you could possibly consider applying for a variance like really quick. And then run those two together next month. That's just a potential option. And then I would renotice this as an additional public hearing like we did for Morningside tonight. So the proceedings would continue. You'd have your second public hearing before the Board of Adjustment. And you would also have a coinciding variance application.
And the variance would allow it to move across the other side of the ditch.
I think that's, I'm staying on the other side of the ditch with my logic, because
Yeah.
the zoning commission directed you to look at that distance that way.
But I think even moving it forward affects less neighbors, even if you
Yes.
left it on the same side of the ditch, it's gonna.
If that lighting does improve for them, I think that could fit within the scope.
Well, if you move it forward, it affects fewer on the south side of the road, but it could potentially affect, there are some houses
Mm-hmm.
on the north side of the road that could possibly be affected.
Yeah, is that, there's a house, is that north of the industrial or the business there?
Mhm.
on Charles Avenue.
I don't, I mean, across the way there's businesses.
Yeah,
Specifically, the houses would be further west. So moving it forward, I don't think would change the houses to the north, if you will, because, I mean, they would, but they're a long ways away.
They're-
Yeah, it's not going to affect them any more than what you're already, I mean, it's gonna be very
Correct.
similar. Personally, I like putting it on the other side. I think it'll make more people happy. If we're gonna do a variance, then do a variance.
I think we would probably have to reset back to the zoning commission if we went that far.
Hmm.
Just to keep you in good grounds with everything.
Trying to stay in good ground.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to wade through the different rules.
Yeah.
I do business in this town, so I gotta try to.
Those ordinances sometimes can cause headaches with the logistics. But they're a good thing.
So how much time are we looking at if we move it on the other side of the ditch?
Well, we would, where are we at? July here? We'd have a new application that, everything in before August 1st and September. It'd be on the zoning commission August and be back here.
What kind of time frame are you on your
September.
pricing?
I mean, I think, what if, I mean, here's my concern. What if none of that works and we're compliant tonight? I mean, I guess my thought process is we approve tonight. That's your decision, not mine. And then we work towards the alternative plan, but we have a plan in place to move forward because we are in compliance with all the criteria. And I feel like we put the work in to do that. I've got a long standing relationship with Dana. I'm gonna do everything I can to try and make that work. And Mr. Boatman, I know him too, and we have a good relationship. So there's, I know that we need to find a way to make things work. But if we get stalled out at 0, I don't want to, because we've spent a lot of money and
Well-
time and process to get where we're at.
Yep.
Um,
I was just asking, what kind of time frame are you on?
Well, our goal was to start this a while ago, and then we figured out what the process was. And now our goal was to get, because once we notify the companies that we're working with, it takes them 8 to 12 weeks to get lined up to do this
Yeah.
at a minimum.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, now we're pushing against,
So if
if
we
we
were,
wait 2 months,
Sorry.
we're next spring.
so if we were to grant this permit tonight and he comes back, is there a way, we don't want to have this permit sitting here and grant you another permit?
Yeah.
We have to be able to get rid of this permit.
Yeah, well, the way you put that well, yeah, I haven't heard it that way before, sorry.
We're not gonna put 2 signs.
Yeah, but we also don't dare allow that to be an option.
No,
Things can happen.
I think, the mindset is you stay in the lane in which you're on, and I understand what he's saying is, hey, I've applied here. I'm going for it here based on this and feel it's compliant, but I do think that there's a respect for what the neighbors have brought in. I think that was kind of reflective at the zoning commission meeting. So I'm going back to thinking a bit about what they're saying about exploring that, if there's a way to kind of push it to the north. I think going on the other side is just way, I think that does throw your timeline off if you go, you know, way far to a different distance. And I think that you have to scrutinize tonight or next month if this location can stand on its own where it's at based on what he presented, or if you feel that, you know, what the neighbors have brought to the table as far as a way to, you know, reach out in the sense to address some of those concerns, that would be through the variance kind of scenario. So I kind of think the one of multiple things, because I know we've been doing that all night, is you approve something contingent on, you know, the change of location. I think it is reasonable. We've had different things, variances before that we've talked about adjusting or accommodating things. So I think it's part of what this process is about. We discover new information and there's got to be an ability to make the adjustment or the change. I think to address the due process, what I would do immediately is I would send another letter out about the next public hearing next month and talk about and tell our property owners that the location may be adjusted, you know, put that note in there that what came out of it, and if that becomes part of the variance request, where you could try to look at it as a package deal next month, where all the work that you put in up to this point is still intact as part of that process, because we do have that, I kind of said I wasn't happy with that 35-day thing in the previous agenda item, so I'll kind of contradict myself and say it's kind of helpful potentially in this case as far as sorting it out. But
I don't think the 35 days will help us in this case.
it would if he put a variance on that agenda.
I don't want to go north.
Going north, if you went north and put the variance on that agenda just to go north, I think that could be a potential.
That'd be a quicker resolution maybe, but, so I was wondering that, Dan.
I think we could, so how many weeks did you say?
Once we notify them, it's an 8 to 12-week process. 'Cause
And then
they
you've
have
got to line up.
Well, they got to manufacture the sign.
That's manufactured.
Yeah, they got to manufacture the sign, and I can't, on this type of investment, because I don't know if you looked at the cost to do this. I can't be in a situation where I order the sign and I don't have a place to go with it.
Right.
Because that.
No, that's fully
there's-
understandable.
That's where we're at. That's why I was seeking approval of the way it is and then coming back.
You had hinted around to the fact that it could be approved as presented with the option to request a variance to move it north. Did I understand that right? Is that a possibility?
One of the things, and I know Kevin had mentioned, is approving it as is, or if he wanted to come back for the variance, or tabling it to next month and having him file a variance that will show up on that agenda right next to this tabled item and have those two catch up, but that would have to be based on moving it to the north.
Mm-hmm.
And so technically you could table tonight's decision, or you can go ahead and approve it. If you find that technically you feel that it can fit based on light study or aspects that way.
But you said we could approve it, but we could still say that you could still put out that there could be a move of location, right?
I would say something of the nature of approve it based on the condition that a variance is achieved. And if the variance is not achieved, then it's null and void.
Oh,
That could be a potential option too. I'd be careful with that because I just think it's better for the due process to, if you're going that route, it's better for the due process to table it.
If you would allow the variance option.
If the variance
Yeah.
option becomes part of the play.
I'm just, I'd like this, I mean, I think it fits where it is. I'd just like to see the neighbors, be happy with it and everybody get along and no one's going after each other with pitchforks, but, and it sounds like, he wants to work with the neighbors. But
I'm more inclined to approve it as it is. I think it fits. And my own personal feeling is if he wants to move it across the ditch, I think that makes more people happy than anything. And we don't really have a way of putting a condition on that, is my understanding. But I think we can go ahead and maybe I'm wrong, but I think everybody's getting along well. And I guess I'm taking everybody at their word, both sides.
If I was to say anything, I would say grant him his, or his permit today. And just as a man of his word, I believe that he would have enough time after he purchased it to come back to you guys to move it across the creek.
I agree.
That would reset the process.
It resets the process. Does it it would have to go through, both boards, but let's see, can we get it done fast enough so that they go through the next meeting for both of us?
The problem is you approve it at that location, you would just build it at that location. I think that, I mean, it just, you would want to have the final decision, logistically, have it all set and done so it's clear for everybody. I think it's very problematic to do the maybe thing. Oh, maybe I'll move it because again, I think when property owners get their site plan and they have their plan, they're just going to go for it. They're going to place it there. I think that's the nature. Getting approved and then I've got it slam dunk done. Gonna put it in, but I'm gonna come back and put it somewhere else. I don't see that as logistically
I'm
helpful to
okay
the
if he
process.
puts it here myself.
What's that?
I'm okay if he puts it here myself. I think he's met the requirement.
You're talking about at this footprint
If-
based on this
If
application.
and I don't think anybody is gonna say, oh, this is the end of the world if it goes in this spot. And I think we've got neighbors that seem to be trustworthy enough. We'd be starting the process over, but it sounds like by the time you got construction and everything done, you're probably not gonna be that far off.
Well, it depends on that contingency. I think the contingency is a stretch going across the creek, but a contingency about having a variance.
Right, and that would have to come up to us for the variance.
Mhm.
And I can't see why we wouldn't grant a variance so that he would be affecting his own property rather than a neighbor's.
That a variance could technically go on next month.
now, are you talking a variance, Doyle, just to move it forward?
No, I'm talking a variance to go across the creek.
I think that has to have a reset.
I think that resets it quite a bit.
Well, and
That's a couple months or 90 days or whatever that is. That's,
I think that's a doable time frame, and it gives everybody what they actually want.
Well,
Hey, Dan, this is Dana, and I'm the property affected the most. I would love to see it across the street, across the creek, and I won't complain a bit. I'll give you 100% my blessing right now. You put it across the creek and it doesn't affect me nearly as much. And it gives it better sights for Kevin. It doesn't affect any of the neighbors to the north because it's shining in a different direction. It's a win-win. As a property owner, it's a win-win for me. And I know it's slowing Kevin's process down, and I appreciate his patience on this, but it does help me a lot.
So what would your thought process be if we were to grant a permit tonight? So that he could go ahead and get this bought?
Well, if Kevin's a man of his word, and if he says he's going to come back with a variance to move it across the creek, I would be okay with that. It's just that I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think where it's located, though, it does impact my home, Mr. Boatman's home, several homes to the north, which they're going to be in the direct light of it at times, and they're within the same distance that I am of it. So, but moving it to the east, it doesn't affect any homes whatsoever. And the homes that it does affect to the north side, they all have trees, mature trees surrounding their property. So they're not going to get much view of it at all, if any. And then you're talking about it's going to impact businesses which Mr. Heiss already owns most of the property in that area. And it affects the sign that he has, and it's causing the logistics is on his property. And he doesn't really compare one way or the other, whether it competes with it or not, I would bet.
Okay, logistically, if there's a way to, I know where Kevin's coming from. If there's a way that he gets an assurance that the board would grant that permit, because I think there's a form of risk here on jumping, over to the different location. There's a way he could leave here tonight with a level of assurance as far as delaying. The reason I say this is I think we got to be consistent with the active application that's floating before you right now, because you don't want to mess up on that application. Now, technically, we'll have to go back and look, but it was noticed based on this parcel. See, I'm coming around a little bit. It's this parcel. Now, if you do table it and we notice it that it's coming back based upon the new founding information, and he files a variance kind of in the meantime, next month, you would be able to render a decision, I think, on multiple fronts. Next month, you could do it at this location, or if we properly notice it and put the options in there, I think we would have a chance at that as long as he files the variance in the meantime. So if you go tomorrow and you submit a variance into the office and we plan on them rendering a decision next month while this application is still active, I think that's a possibility. But I do think he needs a level of assurance as far as doing that. And I think that kind of rests in that this location still is in play as far as next month.
That is for either right here or actually just moving it ahead to try to alleviate the neighbors' concerns.
Yeah, I think that again, this is information we've learned from the public tonight, and you have 35 days to make a decision. And I think that that's part of the consideration process. Next month it doesn't negate this location, but opens up the opportunity for the other location if we notice that appropriately. And I think in the meantime, it would be on Kevin and their team to file the variance application, and the variance is going to have to ask for alleviating those setbacks from the existing billboards out there and from the agricultural estates, if there's any in there affected. So I'd if you go that route, I'd ask you to come up and see me, or we start communicating and get that variance active. And then another letter will go out saying that they need to render a decision, but it needs to be fully transparent that if that don't work out, they can still approve this location. In other words, you have those options.
Does that process give him the option of moving it over to the other side?
I think because we're on the same parcel, we can notice it that way. And then I'll just have to have a rationale in the letter. And again, that states that after a zoning commission recommendation and after the board of what we learned at the Board of Adjustment, we'll communicate that to them. I would have more of a headache if you're moving it to another property entirely. So we'll just have to kind of glance at the notification zone and everything. But I think in the meantime, your application remains active and it doesn't, in a sense, jeopardize it regardless of 35 days from now. They could render a decision either way.
So in other words, whether we move it north or move it east, the notification, the people being notified stays the same.
That's one thing that I gotta look at because when, which company did you use for your abstract list? Did they measure it off of the location or the? Of the entire parcel? So we were notifying, reason I say this, we were notifying, it was this one here, so Stefan would have got notified and okay, so that's good to know. That helps us right there.
I think everybody that would have been notified should have been notified because.
Yeah, and I recognize their names on the list, so.
So the option, if we were to table this tonight, the options were they could come back, get a variance, move it north, or they could potentially move it east. That's the options for.
I think we can do that because it's on the same parcel.
Okay, so those are the options for the next meeting.
But they would have to, again, present a variant. If you don't present the variance, they still could next month approve this location.
Mhm.
We could. Can we go so there are no due process problems then?
As long as you're on the same parcel and you come up with this solution base, the same people are being notified and we're within that. And I simply explain it in the letter to the same people. They are being notified about the next public hearing.
Okay,
So
so we could approve this contingent for a request for variance.
again,
Or we could table it, either one.
I would table that. Yeah.
I think tabling would give us the most options and just be a 35-day delay.
Yeah.
That'd be all, because I know they're not looking forward to a delay at all. But I want to be mindful of, the public comments and, those that live here too.
Well, the main thing is this gets it where we really want it. I mean, this is a long-term project.
Mhm.
You want it where you really want it, Is that a time frame that you could live with?
We'll live with it as long as we're pretty sure that, we're gonna entertain this the next meeting. Because we have done a lot of due process. No, I can't ask you that question, but similar to conversation, I'm taking you guys at your word too, that, we're seriously considering that as part of the process, so I don't end up with starting at ground zero with no application.
If we table it, we are required, he's going to get a decision 35 days from now.
Just like they had to tonight with Morningside, they have to make a decision next month.
I think they want us out of here, standing up there.
We gotta look. Okay,
I think the public hearing's still open.
it is, yes. Public hearing is still open. Is there any further comments from the public? Okay, I guess seeing none, I guess I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
We have a motion by Pam to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Doyle. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, public hearing is now closed. I guess at this point, I would entertain some discussion amongst ourselves here and see which way you guys want to proceed on this.
I would like to see this tabled until next month and allow them more time to get their variance set in place and have the possibility to move it east if possible to help the neighbors out. Be conscious of their request.
I think that. Sorry, thought it was on. I think that gets everybody where they really want to be. And I think that's the route to go.
At this point, I think that's an outcome I can live with. I do think it does work here, but I think, being considerate of the neighbors and, the potential there, I think this is a good compromise, and we're still not putting too big of a delay on it. So I would be supportive of a table decision.
So do we want to make a motion then? Make a motion to table this and talk about the variance on that too?
You can just make the motion to table it based upon exploring further locations within the property.
Make a motion to table this with the thought of exploring different locations within the parcel.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I got that. So Doyle has made a motion to table this conditional use application with the thought of exploring different locations within the parcel. Okay, do I have a second? Okay, we have a second.
Second.
We have a second by Pam. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move down to our next agenda item. And the public hearing is now open for this. And Dan, I'm going to ask you to please read this into the record.
Okay. Just a second here. All right. Yeah, this one I think is very straightforward. It's by Kevin L. Morton, property down on 108 Bigelow Park Road in Salix. They're requesting relief from the ordinance requirement that you have 10 feet built between structures. They're asking for a setback decline to 4 feet or so. And they simply want to build a garage that you can pass through. And we haven't had, a neighbor did write a letter of support. This is kind of a real reasonable, practical one. The only thing is there'll be a little bit more limitation on wells and septic opportunities that Ivy Bramer had mentioned kind of in the backup materials. But I believe you have a concrete pad already back there that you basically want to place it on. So this is quite frankly one of the most basic variance requests I think I've seen, as I just want to drop from 10 feet down to 4 between the structures. So staff recommends approval of this based upon the practical difficulty, especially under the new legislation that the governor had put in place. And so Kevin Morton is here tonight on behalf of his application, and thank you for waiting.
Okay, if you'd like to speak on behalf of this application.
Could you press those buttons on there too?
There.
Hi. Kevin Morton, 108 Bigelow Park Road in Salix. I just want to put up a simple 1.5 car garage, basically. I'm good from my well, my septic, I measured septic. I got I don't know what you want to call it, contract with the company that put my septic in. They come by, inspect it every year, so I'm safe there. If I go the 4 feet instead of 10 foot, that gives me an option if I want to put a car in there. I have that extra room. Basically all, excuse me, storage, you know, for a motorcycle, 4-wheeler, lawnmower. Right now I keep my motorcycle in a trailer parked out in the driveway, and I'd just rather have it in a garage.
So this would allow you to build a bigger garage
Yeah,
by moving it closer. Otherwise, if we said no, you'd have to build a smaller garage,
right,
is what you're
right.
saying.
And
Okay,
it, you know, really doesn't make much sense.
Sure.
You can get a vehicle in it if you ever want to. I mean, if I ever sell the property, it just adds to the value. And I don't have no room on the east side of my house because the way the lot lines out, if I didn't get along with my neighbor, I couldn't even drive in my backyard. So this gives me an option where I could get through, plus propane guy could get through.
And just for the record, you'll notice Beacon doesn't give the property line justice. And
No.
that's one of the struggles that they
Yeah,
graciously went through the process of, they asked a surveyor to come out, and you see that that was in the backup material. And what the surveyor did is he didn't go as far as a formal survey, but he put together a document that I called and asked him about that verified that he's going to be off of the property line. And what did you ended up finding, what, 3 or 4 feet in
it's
between?
roughly closer to 5 foot. But
Yeah,
4
so-
foot, 9 inches, something like that.
And
From
he,
my closest point.
so his setback that he has to worry about from the side yard line is 3 feet. So he's okay there. And he's just simply asking to build closer to the house.
Sure.
When I was looking at this, I see that you have your driveway coming in to the garage, the existing
Yeah.
garage. My question is, how are you going to get a car into that second garage? I mean,
Just put a garage door in both of them. So you can just
Oh,
open
so
the
you
garage
could
door and just
put-
drive through.
so you could open it up
Yeah.
from the back side of that garage
Right.
and drive on through,
Yep.
and then, so that just requires 2 doors. How come you don't just add on to the existing garage
I
instead
don't have
of?
any room. Whenever they develop that out there, every house sits at a kind of an angle. And the more you follow the street, the sharper that is. So I gotta go back. Plus then
I-
it don't
I just
bother the
thought- I
neighbors.
just thought the way it looked, maybe you could just make that wall, share the wall, or open up that back wall and then make your new structure behind that.
And behind it, that's what it is, gonna be in behind.
Yeah. But I just thought you could use the
Oh,
same-
just take out the whole wall.
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm messing with the structure of the house, and this way it's separate and the roof line goes a different direction. And It's a little
Mm.
cheaper
Oh,
on insurance when
okay.
it's not attached.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
anyone have any other further questions? Do you have anything further to add?
No. I
Okay.
Appreciate taking the time.
Yeah, well, thank you for bearing with us here then. Okay, is there any more public comments? Anyone on the phone?
No.
Okay, then I cut you off, Dan. Do you have something to add?
No, I was
Okay.
going to say,
I guess, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this.
I so move.
Yep, we have a motion by Pam to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I second.
Seconded by Doyle. Any further discussion? Here, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Public hearing is closed. I guess I would open it up to the board now for thoughts on this.
My thinking is just to go ahead and approve, based on what he submitted. It looks very straightforward and that he's met all the necessary criteria. So I would be in favor of approving.
I think this looks like a straightforward application to me too, so No problem. So would someone like to entertain a possible motion for this?
Can it be just as simple as I move that we approve this request, this variance request?
Yeah, it could be something to approve the variance request to reduce the setback as requested.
Okay, what Dan said. Do I have to say it again?
Probably better so I get it right.
Okay,
From probably 10 to 4. 4 was the magic number, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I move that we approve this variance to move the setback from 10 to 4 in this particular case, to help out the owner and make it so that he can have a full-size garage there.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, I want to make sure I have this motion right. Pam, you made a motion to approve the variance as presented. Okay, as presented, to reduce the setback distance from 10 foot to 4 foot in order for the construction of the garage.
Basically.
Or can I amend that and say,
You can amend it.
in order for the construction of the proposed garage?
Sure,
That works.
sounds good.
Okay. We'll finish this off here. Okay, so Pam has made a motion to approve the variance as presented to reduce the setback distance from 10 feet to 4 feet in order for the construction of the proposed garage. That was seconded by Doyle. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk. We'll talk this week. Thursday works. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda?
No,
Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna move down to item 7, staff update.
we're good tonight. I'll let you know if something comes up via email.
Okay,
Good.
thank you, Dan. Is there any board member comment or inquiry? Okay, seeing none, would someone like to entertain a motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Okay, Pam's made a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, that has been seconded by Doyle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, we're adjourned.